Hello and welcome back. This is Candace from Candoodle back with another video on the Possum Stamps YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be showing a technique for making your own stencils for coloring stamped images. So let's get started. Today I'm using the Gingerbread Lane stamp set because we are doing a little bit of Christmas in July at Possum Stamps, so I thought I would give some inspiration for those of you who want to get started early on your holiday cards. So I started off with the sentiment and I'm getting that centered using one of my Misty Creative Corners, and then I'm going to stamp that down on tracing paper to see if I like the placement. It wasn't quite centered, so I realigned my tracing paper to get the sentiment where I wanted it, and then I lined the sentiment stamp up with that and pushed my Misty door down to make sure I had it in the right spot. I double checked one more time with the tracing paper before I stamped it onto my card base to make sure I had the placement exactly where I wanted it. Then I'm going to come in with a few of the little candy stamps from this stamp set, and I'm going to just kind of stamp these sporadically all over my card base. So there wasn't a huge rhyme or reason to this, I just wanted them kind of evenly spaced. I did end up starting out with the candy canes and kind of evenly spacing those, and then the other stamps like the peppermint and the gumdrop are a little bit smaller, so I figured I could put those in the blank spaces left between my candy canes. I am using a stamping tool because I tend to like to double stamp these to get a really nice crisp black outline, but you could definitely also use an acrylic block or whatever you're comfortable with to stamp these. I just find I'm more nervous with an acrylic block not being able to double stamp. So once I was done with my candy canes, I came in and used the gumdrop and peppermint stamps to fill in some of the gaps. And I also you can see I stamp them off the page in some areas, so I just move it in my Misty so I'm able to do that. I just like that it looks like it's more of like a pattern paper sort of feel when I do it that way, but you could definitely keep all of yours on the page if that's what you prefer. So once I was happy with how that was looking, I'm going to move on to creating my masks. So I have some removable post-it tape, which is what I generally use to mask, but you could use any masking paper. And I'm just sticking that down to some scrap cardstock so that I can stamp on these. So I'm going to create a mask for each of my little candies that I used on my card background. So I'm showing the peppermint and the gumdrop here, and I'm just going to stamp those down. It doesn't have to be perfect, you just have to see the lines enough so you can cut around them. So I'm going to come and now stick those down to my cutting mat because I'm going to use an X-Acto knife to cut around these. So the gumdrop is super easy. I'm just going to kind of cut around that, and I tend to like to use my dominant hand to cut, but then I turn my cutting board with my other hand. I just find that's the easiest way for me to cut things. And then for the peppermint, I wanted to do something really fun and only cut every second of the little gaps. So you do have to be a little bit careful towards the center that you're not cutting through the center, or there won't be anything for the little spokes to hold on to. So I did leave a bit of a gap there, but this stamp is perfect to do that. And once I was done with those off camera, I also made 2 masks for the candy canes as well. And then I'm going to use these as little coloring masks. So all you have to do is line them up on your stamped images. And I really like the post-it tape for this because it's a little bit see-through, so you can line it up really easily without a lot of guesswork. And as you can see, I'm now just going to work my way around my card on all of the candy canes that are facing right with that same mask, and I'm using red ink. Now, I would suggest, especially if you're planning on reusing these masks, I have reused these ones a few times since then, and they held up really great. You can even switch colors as long as the ink is dry. I do wipe it away a little bit with a microfiber cloth if I'm doing it right afterwards, especially if I'm using a different color. But what I would suggest is making your squares that you make the mask on a little bit bigger, because as you can see, I got some ink where it wasn't supposed to be because it went outside of the mask. So I just used my Tombow Mono sand eraser and lightly went over that, and the ink comes right off of my card base. But that's just something that you kind of have to be mindful of as you're ink blending, but that would definitely be a little bit easier if your squares were a bit bigger. So that was just something I learned along the way, and I've kept these masks and used them a few other times for other cards, and I think this is a super fun technique that I'm definitely going to try with a few of my other stamp sets as well. It just makes coloring a lot easier and quicker than if I were to use something like Copics, and it still gives a really nice effect. Once I was done with all of my ink blending, I came in with some double-sided adhesive to stick that down to my top folding card base. And of course, I needed to add some sequins. So this is the Diamond Diva sequin mix, and they're so pretty. Some of them are like mirror ball and other ones are more holographic. So I used some of the clear and silver ones and just filled in some of the bigger areas. And I think that this gives it a really nice finished off look. So there we have the final card. You'll have to let me know if you like it down below in the comments. As always, we appreciate the time that you spent here. Don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe for future inspiration from the Possum Stamps YouTube team. And I will see you in another video. Bye!